Welcome, everyone. Today we are going to discuss the impression of silver and gold on stacking strategies, particularly the GSR. I've been stacking for 4.5 years or more. I've never personally seen the GSR go under 60. In fact, I did not even think this would happen in my lifetime, but nonetheless, it has. So now we are dealing with the general theory of what to do with the GSR under 60. As many of you know and subscribe to, if the GSR is above 80, mainly buy silver or trade your gold for silver. A lot of you have done that when the GSR was above 100. And many of you have subscribed to the theory that if the GSR is under 60, mainly buy gold or trade silver in for gold. Like many of you, I usually buy and hold on to my precious metals, but we're in unprecedented times. Many of us believe that the fiat currency will fail, and some of us have gone through a personal SHTF. I'm one of them. My exit strategy has been simple: sell silver instead of gold, because despite the rising price, silver is easier to buy and I have a chance to buy closer to the price that I sold it for. However, today we have an expert in precious metals, a dealer, a person who watches the markets. He has a well-established, honorable precious metals dealership in Wyoming. He does ship throughout the United States. My guest today is Ian Everard of ARK Silver Gold Osmium, aka ARK SGO, and we're going to talk about these subjects today. Welcome in, Ian. How you doing?
Very well, thank you, Tiger. Thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome. I certainly love the way you handle your business and the deals that I've gotten, my wife's gotten, but also other people in our community. I think that you're one of our best dealers out there, and I want everyone else to know about your business. What do you think about the climbing prices of silver and gold? And what are the other precious metals that you deal in?
Yeah, it's pretty breathtaking, isn't it? The rate of increase that silver's been going up, and gold seems to have almost been standing still, whilst silver's been the leader. Historically, once silver starts outperforming gold, something dramatic happens. Has it happened yet? I think we may see some even more dramatic moves coming in silver. Lots of dynamics in play. I think the first time in history that silver has been effectively consumed faster than it's being produced. So, is this an just industrial demand causing it to become more of a monetary metal, or is it just because of supply shortage? The rest of the world seems to be ahead of the US, or has been. You know, lots of countries in Europe, the UK, Japan, and China sold out of retail silver long before we did. But now in the US, the system is creaking, and the retail supply is getting very thin.
So, what other metals are you dealing in just outside of just silver and gold? So, for those people who might be interested in those metals.
Yeah, I mean, we do the usual suspects: platinum, palladium. Pretty hard to get hold of reliably now from the wholesalers. There was a lot of product destruction just about a year and a half ago, when platinum and palladium had just been going nowhere for so long. A lot of the wholesalers just scrapped their inventory, just sent it to refiners. And by nature, platinum and palladium always being smaller mintages, and it's harder and more expensive to mint because of particularly platinum, much harder to stamp than gold. We also do sell a little bit of copper, 49 copper, not in the normal bars and rounds, but just in the industrial nugget form. That keeps the costs down as close as we can to the commodity price. And we also sell rhenium, 75 on the periodic table, probably the joint rarest element on the planet, along with osmium.
You got a piece of that rhenium to show that?
Yeah, I have some scrap rhenium plate. So that is 1/16 of an inch thick, and it's strange because it's actually denser than gold. So you hold that, it's incredibly dense.
And I think you also told me that it's very hard to melt, that oxyacetylene won't do it.
Yeah, only tungsten has a higher melting point, so you're well over 5,000 Fahrenheit to melt that.
That's impressive. How's the osmium business coming?
Osmium has been a bit quiet lately. We've been concentrating on the rhenium. Um, been studying that market since September 2024. But I think we're looking at exciting ways of using osmium and rhenium together.
That sounds interesting. When that
Yeah, yeah. I think to combine the two rarest metals on the planet tells an interesting story.
when that comes out to be that way, will you give us an update?
Well, yeah.
Perfect. As mentioned previously, you named your company in the order that you instruct newbies into the precious metals market, recommending a sound base in silver, then gold, then other precious metals.
Yeah.
This rising cost of all precious metals, do you still stick to that same teaching strategy? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I think silver should be the core, and silver is enough for most people. Um, the other metals, it's a whole different concept. Some people are comfortable with it and some people aren't. But silver, it's the universal precious metal and it's universal money. I think the Western world is becoming a lot more aware of its properties as money, and then people are pretty quick to understand the dynamics that we're running out of silver. So I think it's a very safe place to be. It might be volatile, and historically it's been volatile. But I think the next few weeks will tell us if this recent rise is stable and it's going to carry on rising.
Well, that I understand. We've had talks where you, like everybody else, is concerned about what's going on, how it's going to affect the markets, the risk that dealers take, silver climbing, but wholesalers and refiners buying it back of spot. So I was kind of wondering if you would make a comment about that, and then we'll go on to the next question.
No, sure, yeah. Some premiums at the wholesale rate have turned positive for buybacks. Um, So that's interesting to see. That tells me that there's product shortage, and also several of the largest wholesalers are pretty out of stock of most products, and ones that you can order can be 2 to 3 to 4 weeks delay. But yes, it's a mixed story. I've heard of some dealers offering as low as $20 back of spot. And, so the range has been for sort of generic 1 ounce rounds, 10 ounce bars, 100 ounce bars, $2 back a spot to $20 back. So there's a huge, huge range in the coin shop world. But I think a lot of that depends on how well that coin shop is set up to lay off extra product. If they get offered more than they can have the finances to hold or can sell quickly, are they linked up with a good wholesaler who will take back the product? And so it's a really a complex picture. Sometimes there appears to be a surplus, hence the low ball buyback offers. But the new mint products are in short supply or no supply.
Does that also apply to the collectibles, or is that the collectibles and the non-collectibles now in the same ballpark financially?
Well, we don't deal very much with the collectibles. I mean, one of our companies, Pamp Swiss, does a lot of limited edition. I guess they're sort of quasi collectible. They seem to be for sale, even issues that were produced in 2022, 23. They seem to pop up again. Some of the DC comic items, things like Wonder Woman and Batman, colorized coins and things. When sort of crossing over a little bit into the collectibles, looking at things like Morgan dollars and Peace dollars, they're starting to get a premium again. They were selling at or below spot for a while. But as for the numismatic, I don't really get too deep into that world.
I've sold a lot of my collectibles to Ian, who sold me a little bit back of spot, which she should if she needs to keep the lights on, but also sold a lot of my pours simply because my wife knows less about precious metals and I want to keep basic things here at the house and at my storage unit, so that when she has to deal with it and I might not be with us anymore, she doesn't have to know that much. It's going to be your run-of-the-mill coins and run-of-the-mill bars. If any of you are interested in pours, you might want to contact Ian to see if you would be willing to buy what he has now in stock. This channel is affiliated with ARK Silver Gold Osmium. The owner, Ian Everard, is one of the most honest bullion dealers in the United States. ARK Silver Gold Osmium's owner, Ian, advertises new stackers to start their portfolio in the exact order he named his company. First, starting with a base of silver, then based upon the individual's plans and abilities, progressing to gold. Although he is the first dealer of osmium in the United States, he recognizes that osmium is not for every stacker or collector, and he does not advise this for everyone, but it is there for the stacker or collector who is interested in additional metals, including osmium, platinum, palladium, and others. ARK Silver Gold Osmium has some of the best prices that you can see here and on his website, noted in the QR code and in the description below. You can also call for pricing and purchasing and take advantage of his specials today by reaching out to Ian at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arksgo.com. And make sure to tell him, of course, that Tiger Stacker sent you. My next question is, as mentioned before, people have suggested buying or trading gold for silver when the GSR was above 80 and buying or trading for gold when the GSR is below 60. Currently, I looked at it today, it was 50 point something. Is this advice what you would give, or would you recommend a different strategy, especially to a new stacker?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to set a rule, but really, as this is unfolding, more dynamics are coming out. Especially with China saying they're going to have strict government supervision of export of silver. And, and I think we're talking potentially 140 million ounces might never leave China that was leaving China. Now, in that case, we might want to reassess what is the gold-silver ratio likely to end up at. So although 50 to 1 seems, in recent history low, the old monetary value was 15 to 1 because that was the perceived prevalence in the earth crust. I think it was Isaac Newton who calculated that out. Comes out the ground, you see figures between 7 and 9 to 1.
And the heard was 9 to 1 that's coming out of the ground. I think Isaac Newton was correct. Our first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, also suggested a 15 to 1 ratio for our government monetary system back when our early government was in effect.
So I think that ratio has plenty of room to get even lower. If the production ratio is, say, 9 to 1, over half of the silver is consumed and made practically unobtainable by being used in tiny amounts in billions of applications. So the available supply might be 3 to 4 to 1. And that's pretty close to some people have calculated that the above ground reserves of silver compared to the above ground reserves of gold in refined form, whether it's in bullion, in jewelry, or bank deposits, you name it, it's about 2.5 to 1. So, just because that's a ratio doesn't mean that's going to be the monetary ratio. But I think there's a lot of pressure still to make silver head to 40, 30, 25. And I think 15 to 1 is possible. So I think it could be a bit early to swap silver for gold, unless you have a distinct need for storage space, or if you just want that compact wealth, or you want a bit less volatility in the price.
So let's say I walk into your store and let's say, for the sake of argument, the silver to gold ratio is 50 to 1.
Yeah.
So question number one is, you got to keep your lights on. So I'm assuming you'll buy a certain amount back of spot and then going to gold. So let's say I walk in with a tube of 2 or 3 tubes, or maybe 4, of Britannias. I love Britannias, and so do you. And I want to walk out with the St. Gaudens. So, as of today being January 16, how would that transaction transpire?
So the last sort of bulk of gold to silver trades we did, we were getting pretty close to the gold silver ratio. We were sort of within 2%. So when the ratio was 80, the effective ratio would be 78 ounces, 78 and a bit ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. So we can keep it pretty close. We're happy, particularly for existing clients, just to make our margin on one of the trades, and the other one could just be neutral, can be a wash. So if we're buying gold at wholesale price, we would sell that at the same price, and then the spread would be on the margin we could make on reselling the silver that's traded for the gold. So say for the Britannias, we're now sort of 0 to +2 is the bid for silver Britannias.
Yeah, I've noticed that the Britannias tends to be a little bit more pricey now than the Eagles, which I was a little shocked about.
They've become unavailable. The British Royal Mint is not shipping any over to us. And part of that is the cost now. But I think also they have got a huge demand in Great Britain for them, because although if you buy new silver in Great Britain, you pay 20% that, long term, when you sell the silver, there is no tax on the gain, however big the gain is. It's completely tax exempt. There's no income tax, no capital gains tax. So the Britannia is incredibly popular in Britain. So yeah, they're pretty well unavailable at wholesale level now.
Okay, so if we are, and I'll just briefly bring up the current market. So if we're looking at basically now about a 51 gold to silver ratio, with silver basically at 90, almost 91, and gold at a smidgen above 4,600. If someone like me walks in and wanted to go ahead and do that exchange, what do you think would people? I don't want you to hold him to this, because things change, and you got to keep in mind he's got to keep the lights on. He's got to pay the bills. He's got to feed his family. He's got to keep the business open. Basically, what would someone be considered at this moment in time?
Yeah, I mean, our typical profit on a silver deal is around 2%. So we're pretty low compared to most of the industry. And we can do that because we're doing large volume trades, we're doing big trades. So if you wanted to exchange ounce for ounce, you'd probably be looking about 52, 53 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold at the moment.
Okay.
And quite often we can do a deal if we've got gold that has come in, that has been sold to us, and we can get it slightly back a spot. Or, we can be generous if we exchange that for silver.
Okay. Now, with those of us, such as myself, who definitely do prefer the pre-33s, and pre-33 is per $20 double eagle is, excuse me, 0.9676 ounces of gold. I'm assuming that there'd be just a little bit more math involved, which would just change it, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you're just counting the gold content. Yeah, on the pre-34. Yeah.
Exactly. I would like to, again, temporarily touch on the subject of rhenium, even though this might not be something important to traditional stackers. This is a very precious metal, especially in purifying gasoline and, more importantly, military applications. Even though this is not a traditional stacking metal, those of us who are interested in a strong military presence to protect our country, this metal is absolutely essential. And your knowledge in this metal is commended. I've also heard you mention that China has increased their purchasing of rhenium, especially in light of the fact that they don't produce any themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they don't produce it from domestic minerals and mining, but they do get a lot when they process copper. So they're processing copper from around the world. So they do process a lot. But yes, in 2023, China bought 26 tons. That might not sound a lot, but the typical annual production is 50 to 60 tons. So in just 1 year, they took half of the world's production. And that's a trade that we know about. That's verified. So we have that proven. And they've also been buying up covertly and overtly in Europe and here in the US. And it's tragic, really, that the US hasn't got hardly any export controls on it. And we're sort of stuck in the US. The US uses 75% of the world's uranium with our civilian aviation, military aviation, space, oil refinery, electronics, and now medical uses. So it is many, many trillions of dollars of industry are 100% dependent on having access to uranium. So it is incredibly key. So although it is relatively few uses compared to silver, the uses are incredibly high value.
Well, if I remember correctly, you said that we produce some of our own rhenium,
Yes.
but the percentages is not that great, and other countries produced more. China produces none. Would you care to go over that percentage?
Sure. Yeah. The US produces approximately 30% of the world's uranium, Chile 49%, and pretty well most of the balance is from Poland and Kazakhstan. There is a chance we're going to get some coming from Peru, but we're also facing a potential catastrophic drop in supply from Chile because the copper that the molybdenum that has uranium in Chile is above ground surface mined. They're coming towards the end of the lifetime of those mines. They're pretty well mined out. They've got plenty more reserves, but they're going to have to go underground to mine them. And that will be 2 to 3 times the current cost to extract the copper. And at the same time, we're going to have more and more copper available from Central Africa, which China is making an incredible investment in railway to connect Central Africa eastwards. And that copper is generally copper oxide deposits, and it has no rhenium in it. So we could be facing a catastrophic supply destruction in as little as 2 to 3 years.
So rhenium is an accidental find along with copper.
Along with molybdenum in some copper.
Yeah, I found out a little bit about molybdenum just recently. Saw it on Yankee Stacking's channel where he was talking about Vanguard mining, which sounds like it's in Argentina. I started looking into molybdenum. That is not typically thought about a lot.
No, I mean, it's key in making special steels, alloying with steel. That's one of its key uses. Also, as a medical metal, it's alloyed. 52.5% molybdenum, 47.5% rhenium makes the ultimate medical metal for pins, plates, screws, stents, and any use in the human body where titanium alloys are used or the older chrome cobalt alloys. And the human body is reacts much less to the rhenium molybdenum alloys. So that's an exciting, relatively new use. The first licenses were given in 2019. So we've had many thousands of operations now, and they've been highly successful with zero metallurgical failure.
Zero mechanical failure or just the metal failure?
Zero failure. Apparently with some of the titanium rods and pins, they can bend or break. That just doesn't happen with the rhenium molybdenum medical alloys.
Okay.
So that's an exciting development. I think it's going to be a rapidly increasing demand on the rhenium supply.
Well, that's kind of interesting to hear that. Now, I'm not an orthopedist, boarded in family medicine and most of my career in emergency rooms. But I remember when I was a medical student and later as an intern and a resident, you do these rotations with all these specialties, not only so that you can decide what you want to do with your life, but also so when you're out in the real world and you're working a different field, such as in my case, emergency medicine, family medicine, you have a clue from watching the specialist that you trained under how these things come to be. They didn't have those metals back then.
No?
I do remember that there were a lot of people that had successes, but a lot of people that had complaints.
Yeah, I mean, people are, from what I've heard, reacting to titanium because titanium is used in a lot of foods. The food industry and confectionery quite often use titanium in the hard shell coatings on candy. So people aren't getting allergic to rhenium, but they're reaching saturation. Their body is saturated to the point where it doesn't tolerate anymore. So yeah, it is. Well, I'm trying to think of the right words. It's concerning, really, that rhenium is finding all of these uses that there just isn't going to be enough to satisfy.
This is something I've never heard before. Are you telling me that they're putting titanium in our food?
Yeah, in candy coatings they use titanium. I think titanium oxide, and yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. That's not just from first exposure to this knowledge. That's a little scary.
Well, what it does, it's not necessarily harmful until you might need a titanium implant, a pin or a rod or a plate. Then your body can start reacting to it because it's saturated. It can't cope with any more titanium. So
Okay.
it's shown great promise. I think the technical term is how many ions it releases, I think, and it's very, very low, almost completely non-reactive in the human body.
Okay. I'm going to look into that because I did not know that it was in candy. Wow. Thank you. You see what I mean, people? This guy knows a lot of stuff more than just precious metals, and it's one of the reasons why you need to start contacting him. And I'll be putting, for those of you who do buy from him, if you tell him that Tiger Stacker sent you, it does help the channel because running a YouTube channel does have some costs to it. So let me get on to the next question. So what's new at ARK? Do you have any new specials or deals?
Always, yeah, we're always trying. So I think our premiums are among the lowest, if not the lowest, right across the board from Silver Eagles. We do have a lot of inventory. I was checking just yesterday, showing a client how low the wholesaler's inventory was. And for many items, we have more inventory than the second largest wholesaler was showing, which is crazy, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
it was like, they were showing like 3,400 ounce bars available. We've got way more than that. They were showing, oh my gosh, just very small numbers of different products. Very unusual. Normally, they got hundreds of thousands of ounces in each product range. So it is concerning. Will that be replenished, or are we now seeing an uptick in the retail demand that is just going to keep draining the wholesalers?
That's impressive.
And sort of swing back round, we were talking about the gold silver ratio. You can learn a lot by ratios. A client friend told me to look at the platinum to silver ratio, and platinum appears to be almost at an all-time bargain compared to silver. That's fascinating to look at that, because you wouldn't have thought so with platinum at $2.5, $2,400, $2,300. But then when you look at the ratio of production to cost, silver is approaching $3,000 a kilo. Rhenium is approaching $5,000 a kilo. Yeah, rhenium is 500 times rarer by production, yet it's less than twice the price. So you look at these ratios, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to reach that actual production ratio, but it gives you an indication of what is potentially, still the best buy. Particularly if you're adding to a portfolio and you want a little bit of variety, have a look through what the ratios are, and you can look up the historic ratios back to 1970 pretty easily, and have a look at the patterns.
That's not a bad idea. I normally don't think about platinum that much. Personally, when I get to a point where, I'm working again, I'm going to start trying to rebuy silver. I'm going to do a little smart. I'm going to stay away from fun things.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you're making them instead, aren't you? Well, you're making fun things like that. Tiger
yeah,
bar. Is that a 14-ounce tiger bar you've got?
it's 14.45
Yeah.
troy ounces. This is the big one. I have a small one that I made, but I messed it up. So I'm going to repour that and make a new one. I do have a few things that's in the background that I'll be releasing a video on later. Basically, I have my eye on a couple things you got once I start working again. But one of the things that I've seen you show me is the stockpile that the U.S. government had sold. Both the 1 ounce rounds and the 10 ounce bar.
Yeah, these even have the date on. I don't know, can you see that?
There you go.
1981.
Talk about something that's vintage.
That's physical proof.
Wow.
So minted from U.S. Strategic Stockpile Silver, USSA office, San Francisco.
Order a stockpile, and now they want to rebuild a stockpile.
And why 1981? Because they crashed the price of silver down, partly after the Hunt brothers went incredibly long, partly because other investors around the world were piling into silver. So why would the government dump their silver when the price was falling rapidly? It's the same question. Why did Gordon Brown sell half of Britain's gold at $270 an ounce? That is not accidental, is it? It's like,
Yeah, the question is, what did they get out of it?
what did they get out of it? Prolonged the strength of the dollar, because silver is a canary. That is, it doesn't just sing; it shouts, and it won't die. They've tried to kill silver, but I don't think they counted on the amount of industrial uses. For the first time in history now, we're into the sixth, seventh, and if you count the ETS, eighth, ninth year of deficit. It's never happened before. Throughout human history, increasing in exploration, increasing in technology and machinery to get more and more efficient mining. So, you could mine lower and lower grades. I mean, the old silver miners would find a seam, a vein, 1.5 kilos, so 1,500 grams per ton. When that ran out, they would stop. Now silver mines will go down. I think I've heard figures as low as 80 grams per ton. So instead of 1,500 grams, 80 grams. So modern machinery and techniques have enabled, extraction of lower and lower concentrations. So we've been producing more and more silver, yet we're using it faster than we can produce it. And then if you look at the expansion of copper mining, we've gone, I think, 5 to 10x the amount of copper produced in a few decades, and a major byproduct has been silver. Yet we're still using it faster. And, in my opinion, the monetary aspect of silver hasn't really kicked in yet.
Well, back in the 80s, to my knowledge, the major consumption of silver was medical, whether it's being used for silver nitrate to help with bleeding or to be used in the analog version of X-rays.
And general photographic film.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
But now
Huge.
it's not the big user. It's your solar panels. It's the electric batteries. It's the cell phones, and more than what it used to be during my younger days.
Yeah, no, for sure. And a lot of people don't mention it's the best conductor of heat. So silver paste is a huge component in computing.
Oh, yeah.
Just to take the excess heat away from semiconductors.
Ian's always been good at giving deals. I really want you to feel free to contact him. His information will be in the description below. I've covered all my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell the viewers?
Oh my, plenty. I mean, a lot of people, I was getting messages when silver sort of broke into the 36, 37, you must be excited. And I'd reply, no, because I think sooner rather than later, 2 to 3% people who haven't started buying precious metals are going to realize they need to, and they're going to try and get out of the traditional financial system. And there just isn't room. Not that potentially, I mean, if silver went to $1 million an ounce, well, of course there's enough silver, but it's going to run out before the people that need it can buy it, because it's only 10, 20, $30 billion market worldwide, the retail silver. It's tiny, tiny, tiny market. And talking about ratios, I did like a thought exercise. If you had $1 million a year ago, you've only got 300,000 now compared to silver. Now, your $1 million from a year ago hasn't lost that much purchasing power against most things, but silver is now the leading indicator. So as silver's doing this, the dollar is going to be doing this. And it's at what point do we get an exodus from the system that can't cope with more than 2 or 3% people trying to exit? Because if you haven't got buyers, then you get a collapse.
Yeah.
So my real, not quite anxiety, but maybe, I'm anxious. Does this mean we're going to get a freeze up of the banking system? And then they're going to use the central banks and governments around the world, use that as the excuse to bring in the digital currency. And then once that's in place, you're not going to get instant financial repression, but the tools are there for unlimited control.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Nope. So that's my sort of anxious thoughts. If you know, I mean, silver just closed, I think, just over $90 today. It's dramatic, isn't it?
It is. And because of this global financial warfare that's going on,
Yeah.
with commodities, not just silver, but also oil. And I said this before, I'm going to say it again. I think China knew that we were going to go after Venezuela after so many years of talking about it. I think that they knew that we were going to obtain the oil.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
is
no, for sure. Their actions show it, because
really,
they've been building refineries and adapting existing refineries to process the light oils that are more commonly available. So
so
they're ahead of us, because we're stuck. A lot of our refineries can only handle the heavy crude. They can't handle the light sweet Texas crude that we produce, so that gets exported, and we import the heavy crude to extract, separate all of the different products. And
okay.
without rebuilding refineries, we're sort of stuck. We have to export oil and import oil, whereas I think China is much more resilient. Plus, they think in decades or centuries, and we think in minutes and hours, it seems.
They do think in terms of the long play.
Yeah.
Their administrations, their dynasties last a whole lot longer. In fact, I got a video that's in development about that. So for those of you who are interested, if it's released, go back and watch it. And if I haven't released it yet, it's coming. But honestly, I think, in my opinion, the restriction of silver is in response to us decreasing their availability to Venezuelan oil. I may be wrong, and I certainly don't know everything about everything, but that's my personal opinion. It just seems to fit.
Well, they still have the stranglehold on the rare earths. They have a stranglehold on the tungsten alloys, what they call the super hard metals. They've temporarily lifted it, but they're monitoring very carefully to prevent anybody from forming a stockpile to form resilience. So they're monitoring if any company asks for more than they would traditionally use. The answer is no. So if the gloves come off, oh my gosh, I don't know. How does it end? I mean, we're not going to be able to invade China to take the metals we need. And another problem is, because they've cornered the market and they're processing 90% or 100% of some of the rare earths, they have the technology and the capability to do that. So can we reproduce that? Yes, but not instantly.
No, it's going to take time.
It's going to take time, but it's also going to take stability in policy. Well, we don't have stability in policy, do we? Just the nature of our political system. It's a year of the new president's term, and then they're thinking about, are we going to lose in the midterms? So,
Right.
so at best, there's a few months of policy. It makes you wonder if it's deliberate. And
It might be,
almost,
but it might just be part of our system, because our system is based on short term.
you really need some things taken out of the hands of politicians that need to be decided, not just because of the monetary interests of vested interests, but of the interests of our country for the next few decades. So that's hard, isn't it? Finding people who will work benevolently for the benefit of the country. I think our way of life is going to change dramatically over the next few years.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. On that note, I'm going to say thank you, Ian, for coming on board. Can't wait to have our next one.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.